This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to the newest episode of Daily English Premier League here at GSPN. My name is Michał, Czarniecki, based in California. So glad to have you with us. Jump in, grab something to eat, grab something hot or cold to drink, whatever you wish, whatever you desire, and please just get ready for 30 minutes of just pure football talk. I am joined by a special guest today. That is Tom Elkins from Daily West Ham. So good to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to get started. I'm very happy. Obviously, we're going to get into it, but happy West Ham fan. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Well, to be honest, like, it's super refreshing to see a happy football fan as a Man United fan. Like, you know, I just want to recall what it's like to be happy as a football fan, and seeing your happy face, it just takes me back to 2013. Okay, but just all of this nostalgia aside, let's just jump straight into reviewing West Ham taking on Leicester. A lot of experts predicted that this would be like a catwalk, really, for West Ham and for Graham Potter's side. And actually, that's what happened. Leicester had basically nothing to show, and like nothing to show because they did not have anything to provide for. And because of that, well, Leicester defeated 2-0 at home at London, away at London Stadium. What are your thoughts of this performance, Sam?
It was a strange one for me because this season we've looked so inconsistent, and most of the time it's not been good. Under Potter, we've definitely been better, but there hasn't really been a game where we've been afforded the space and the ability to coast through like we did in this game. Leicester looked really poor. Jamie Vardy up top looked really isolated, and we were able to quite comfortably have the possession of the ball and kind of just pass it across our back line. And then when there was an opportunity to make a forward run or to hit a diagonal pass, we were able to do it under no real pressure, which meant that when we did play and when we did take those opportunities, we were in a much better position to actually capitalise. I think I really like how our fullbacks are getting so high. I'd love to talk to you about the whole Aaron Wan-Bissaka situation, because the fact that you even let him go seems ridiculous, and the price that we paid for him is unbelievable. He's been an absolute revelation for us this season. Going forward, I don't think anyone knew that he had this sort of attacking ability, but he's been absolutely tearing it up. He looks confident. He looks so loose on the ball. He's just trying so many creative things that, as a player that you kind of associate with one-on-one defending, when he picks up the ball, he's just comfortable and he wants to go forward, and he's, you know, doing step overs and he's beating people and he's bombing down the line. So yeah, that's really amazing to see. And then on the other side, you have Ollie Scarles, who has been amazing this season. Academy product is part of our youth setup that have done really well over the past couple of years. And he looks amazing. He's come into the team and he started really well. And now it's him and Emerson are kind of fighting for that spot, which, you know, at the start of the season, he was barely even a fringe player. And now I think he probably starts, to be honest, because he's been so good. But yeah, to summarise, very happy.
Well, not to mention that, like when you mentioned, of course, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and he did have kind of like a couple of those episodes where we're playing for Man United of him springing down the wing and giving something in attack, but we didn't see it very often. And you know what? The second you told me that, how could you let that kind of guy go? I mean, he's got such attacking prowess on the wing. Like, how could you let a guy like that go? I just have this allegory in mind that if you are very bad in some toxic relationship, once you get out of a toxic relationship, all of a sudden your wings grow back. And this is exactly the case with Wan-Bissaka, and not only with Wan-Bissaka, Marcus Rashford for Aston Villa. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, he's found himself like his second career. And he feels like he really feels super rejuvenated. So sadly, I would say that it wasn't the players, it's the club. The club is like right now like I'm sorry to say, but a cesspool of toxic relations, toxic club. And well, more power to the guys like Wan-Bissaka, because right now they're happy at West Ham, and I really feel happy for them. I really do. And on a side note, I really do not understand some of the United fans screaming at Wan-Bissaka and at Rashford, being like, "Oh, like we've had enough of this skank in our team." And I'm like, "Yeah, and this skank is performing well now. So what the hell are you happy about?" Sorry, you know what? I promised that I wouldn't be super salty about Man United. I'm sorry, just
Yeah, that's my fault. I brought up Wan-Bissaka, didn't I? So that's my fault.
That's fine. That's completely fine. I want to talk a little bit about the impact that Aaron Cresswell had on today's match, because his rating on one of the, like, of course, stats websites, they didn't pay us for making this episode for the asset, so I will not mention the name, but their final rating is 8.6 out of 10. And this website that I'm actually currently looking at, they've decided to award Aaron Cresswell with the Player of the Match award. Is that deserved?
I think it is, to be honest. You know, he's 35 now, so he's very much in the kind of dying embers of his career, and he's probably playing some of the best football we've seen him play for West Ham, to be honest. It's only since Graham Potter has come in that he's trusted him with that left-sided centre-back role in the back three, and obviously because of his age, he's not necessarily physically as agile and doesn't have the pace that he may be used to, but his experience and his positioning and his decision making are all so good that when things are getting tough, and maybe not so much in this game, but in other games, he just knows what to do because he's been in the Premier League for so long, so many years. He's always been a really integral part of our squad. Maybe never necessarily got the headlines, but it has always been someone that you can rely on. So when we have relied on him, he's been really good. And then in this game, when we start to have a little bit less pressure on us, his experience and his leadership really shines through, because throughout the whole game, you see him dictating the back line, you see him pointing, you see him shouting, he gets the ball, he moves it on, he calls for it, he brings other players into the game. And yeah, just really overall, really solid performance, and someone that deserves it, because he has been very under the radar, I think, as English left backs go. I think he probably should have played for England at some point, to be honest, because, you know, we've not always been blessed with quality in the left back area. So I think he definitely should have got an England call up at some point. But yeah, definitely deserved. He's someone that I just love to have at the back because of how calm he is and how experienced he is. So yeah, really happy for him.
Well, thanks to his contributions and thanks to basically the overwhelming posture of West Ham, of course, from Leicester's perspective. And now the Foxes have lost 11 of the last 12 Premier League games. And in his 14 games in charge, Ruud van Nistelrooy has picked up just 7 points, 3 fewer than previous Foxes boss Steve Cooper managed this season, 10 in 12 games. I think if that alarm, that really, like, this critical alert hasn't sounded yet at King Power Stadium, it definitely must be ringing now. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, isn't it? Because it's the question of, is it the players or is it the coaching staff and the tactics and the way that they're approaching the game? For me, I think it's probably a bit of both. I think it's difficult to place all the blame on the manager, because there's no excuse for not pressuring teams and not fighting till the end. I think there was a chance really late in this game where I think it was Soler who was a substitute, so maybe had a little bit more fresh legs than some of the other players on the pitch. But He is making such an effort to make an attacking run, to try and pull the defenders out, to make space for his teammates. It's not even really a run where he's looking for the ball. He's purely doing it to make space for his teammates. But he sprints past about 3 Leicester players, which is just, how do you defend that? What do you say as a coach to say, you need to work hard? That should be something that just happens. So the fact that that hasn't happened, and that is so typical of how this whole game played out, because West Ham looked comfortable. And I think any team this season knows that West Ham haven't been good. So if you want to get something out of them, put them under pressure, because they just haven't been good enough this season. And the likelihood is that, you know, if you want to get something out of them, put them under pressure, because they just haven't been good enough this season. And the likelihood is that, there is some sort of frailty in us as a football team. So the fact that they didn't press as much as they could have done, and they didn't work as hard, and they didn't fight as hard it's not really defendable. So does it come down to the coach? Does it come down to the players? I think the blame has to kind of lie somewhere in the middle, to be honest.
Yeah, and that those are going to be very hard upcoming months for Leicester. Well, they are. Well, basically, I do not want to put them in the same category as Southampton just yet, although I do think that they are joined with Southampton as those two teams which will definitely see a championship next season. But with that being said, they still have a chance of turning this around. Whether they will do it or not, it remains to be seen. But I actually want to ask you about Jannik Vestergaard, who is just the third player to score an own goal on his 100th Premier League appearance, after Jonathan Walters for Stoke versus Chelsea in January 2013 and Gareth McCauley for West Brom versus Stoke in May 2014. Talk about disastrous 100th appearance. But maybe, just maybe, there is a little body in English football, apparently. I didn't even know that actually existed. It's called Premier League's Goal Accreditation Panel. And this panel could actually overturn this decision to award that own goal to Vestergaard and give that goal to Jared Bowen. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hope so, to be honest. For me, my opinion of whether it should be awarded to the player who takes the shot which results in the goal is that if he's kicking it in the direction of the goal, then for me it should register as a goal to the player who kicked it towards the goal, because if it was going towards the goal and it goes in, then it was obviously the intention to shoot, so it should be classed as a goal if it goes in, if that makes sense. And from the camera angles that I could see, obviously the camera angles they showed on the game, it looks like he kicks it towards the goal. And yes, it obviously gets a big deflection, but
right,
at what point do you decide that the deflection is too big to mean that it wasn't the actual shot that made it go in, it was the deflection? It gets complicated. Right. For me, I think if you kick it towards the goal and it goes in, then you should get the goal. And I think that Jared Bowen kicked it towards the goal. So yeah, I definitely think it's a goal for him. And especially things like that, is the little bit of luck and the little bit of fortune that you just want. It's like, just give it to Jared Bowen, because he's worked so hard. Every single game, he's involved in everything positive that we do. So yeah, the fact that his stats this season haven't necessarily been as good as they could have been, they're still decent, but he has the ability to get so much more. So yeah, I just really want that extra goal tally on his tally for this season.
That would be his 8th goal in 23 Premier League appearances this season. Well, that would be something. And yeah, like, fingers crossed that the accreditation panel will take that under consideration. Because you know what? If I remember that correctly, I think that rule on own goals and how to award the own goals and when not to, I think it was introduced right before the European Championships in 2020 or 2021 because of coronavirus, when even the slightest of reflections actually did count as an own goal. And as a result of that, I believe there was a record, for the very first time in a long time, really, an own goal was actually the leader of the goal scoring charts. Not only European Championships, but in other competitions too. And that was as a result of the revolution of the own goal rule. Okay, but maybe enough about that. Let's talk about something that is super important, especially to you and other West Ham fans out there, is the transformation of West Ham under Graham Potter. What do you think has happened in that squad that you do not need to think so negatively about the future coming?
It seems like we're playing with a lot more freedom, if that makes sense. I think under Lopetegui, there was so much pressure and there was so much hype around this new kind of more dominant style of play that we wanted to have. And it just didn't work. For whatever reason, it didn't work. So old manager out, new manager in. And I feel like he seems to have come in with an air of calm and just spoken to the squad and just basically said it how it is. Like, this season isn't necessarily going to be the best, but we do have the ability to go and play some nice football. So let's leave whatever's happened and let's try and move forward. And it seems like so many players have been completely revitalised. I think the main one for me is probably Paqueta. He's injured now, but in the first few games under Potter, he was playing as kind of a makeshift number 9, and he was doing really well. I think his hold-up play was really good. His ability to link up with other players is obviously excellent. Physically, he's also really good, which I think is such an underrated asset of his. So,
Right.
yeah, it's just really nice to see us enjoying football, like especially in this game. Players were really having a good time. They were enjoying it, playing with freedom and creativity and trying things as well, which I think is also such an underrated asset for a squad to have, is the ability to make mistakes. I feel like under Lopetegui, we were so concerned about making mistakes and concerned about losing the ball that it kind of constricted us when we came to the kind of final attacking moments.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm really happy with where we are. It seems like the squad is happy as we can be. Obviously, as a season, it's not a great season, but there's only so much you can kind of complain, and you have to accept what it is. Probably not going to be the best season, but if we can finish the year or finish the season playing good, positive football, we can then build for next season. And next season, we can really push for European spaces, because I think that's realistically where we should be aiming, because we definitely have the squad, we have the stadium, we have the fan base, we have the history. That is the goal, and I think we can really start to lay some good foundations for next season.
Yep, as of right now, after 8 games with Graham Potter in charge, West Ham has won 3 games, lost 4, and drew once. So that will actually amount to 10 points in the Premier League, which were earned since Graham Potter took charge. And of course, like I think I heard from the commentary team, because I was watching a game, of course, from the US, and the commentary team there mentioned the very first game with Graham Potter in charge, which was an FA Cup tie, actually, against Aston Villa, and that game was lost. Of course, how much progress has been done since that game. So I guess you partially answered this question, that basically this improvement is like you can see it. So, to be honest, it remains to be seen whether this progress will be continued, especially when your status in the Premier League isn't super secured just yet, because there are still games to be played. Speaking about those games to be played, you have now got Newcastle as your next opponent on March 10th. And overall, the average position of your opponents is set at approximately 11.83 as like a position coefficient. So not the worst of opponents. Could have been better, but could have been much worse. So, for example, if you look at Fulham, because currently their average position of opponents is 8th. So their opponents are much, much tougher, just on paper. So how do you like the chances of West Ham in upcoming fixtures?
To be honest, with this kind of new approach, a new look to the way that we're playing, I kind of fancy us against most teams, to be honest, especially when we have so many players coming back. You know, we played basically the whole first half of the season without a striker. You know, we've had Michał Antonio playing in there, and then he got injured. We've had Fulkrug, who was the big money signing, who basically hasn't played any football. You know, so it's been tough, and we've had injuries to centre backs. There's been so many games where we've had to play with just one centre back, and then 4 full backs, 2 playing as the kind of outside centre backs, and 2 playing as the wing backs. So it has been a tough season. Obviously, it's the crux of it is that we haven't been good enough, but there are kind of contributing factors that make you understand why these things happen. Right now, I think our squad is as strong as it has been all season. Getting James Ward-Prowse back on loan or back off of loan is such a brilliant decision by Potter, because he was like one of our best players last season, and then Lopetegui comes in and decides that he doesn't want him in the squad, which it was a very confusing decision at the time, but you trust it because you have to trust a new manager. But obviously it didn't work, and he's come back and he's come straight into the starting 11. He looks really comfortable. Obviously everyone knows about his set pieces. They are ridiculous. The way that he crosses a ball in is unlike anything I've ever seen. The corners seem to land exactly on the money every time, which is always exciting. So I'm kind of quietly optimistic about the latter half of the season, and I think Evan Ferguson will get some goals as well. I think he's not necessarily played as much football as I think he would have hoped so far under Potter. I think it's only going to increase, and when he gets the first, I think they will then start to kind of come in, and hopefully we can start to steal some points off of some of the bigger teams.
Yeah, and there you will have opportunities, plenty. First, we're gonna have those two games which are coming up, like the closest to you right now currently. March 10th, Newcastle. March 15th is Everton, and then what will come? Of course, the international break. And during international break, that is a also an opportunity, but also some dangers, because of course we all know that those international games could be competitive, slightly some in other times even too competitive, and it could result in some injuries. It could result in some drop of form. So I'm really curious as to how all of the teams in Premier League will look on April 1st, April 2nd, at the beginning of April, when the club football will come back from international break. Well, some fans actually prefer club football to international bouts. Well, such as that. Well, okay. So as of right now, let's just take a quick look at the Premier League table. As of right now, West Ham sits 15th with 33 points, tied with Manchester United and Tottenham. And the only reason West Ham is the worst out of those teams with 33 points is because of the goal difference of minus 15. Of course, just like you said, like those problems with not having a striker for like most of the time could be one of the reasons why the goal difference coefficient, the goal difference is so bad. But you'll have a chance. Man United with 14th to Tottenham 13th. And of course, I think I wish you all the best in terms of reaching the top 10 in in that second half of the season, of course. So, with that being said, let's just take a quick break when it comes to our sponsor, Bioniq, and then we will mention the Forecast Friday essential, which is, of course, the FA Cup ties predictions.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Yes, thank you, Bioniq, for sponsoring our podcast. You are listening to Daily English Premier League, brought to you by Global Sports Podcast Network. And this time we will be talking about the FA Cup ties, the upcoming cup affairs, as we can call it. Well, we're going to have a slight break from Premier League, and we will have some interesting bouts right there. First, we were going to talk about Manchester City taking on Plymouth Argyle, and Plymouth Argyle, they have already knocked out one giant out of the competition. The question is, with Manchester City now limping slightly, can they be the next victim of Plymouth Argyle, Tom?
I think they could, to be honest. Like, you think about Man City this season and they just do not look themselves. They just look tired. You think about the amount of time they've spent at the top level being basically perfect. It's been years. It's been years of that high pressure, high level, high intensity. So it's not really a surprise that the wheels have started to fall off. And if there's ever a time to beat Man City in the FA Cup, if there's ever a time you want to play them, it's now. And I bet all of those Plymouth players are so up for this, because it's the opportunity to make absolute history. You think about all of the kind of historically huge giant killings that have happened. This would be right up there with the biggest of them. And I really hope it happens, to be honest. I think it's the magic of the FA Cup, isn't it? It's big
Absolutely
teams
so.
Not respecting smaller teams, and big teams getting knocked out by the smaller teams who just want it more. And to be honest, if Man City don't want it in the Premier League, what's going to make them want it in the FA Cup? What's going to make the players work hard, make them hungry, give them that kind of intrinsic desire to win? I just don't know what the reason would be that they would suddenly up their game in the FA Cup when they've been pretty lackluster in the Premier League. So, yeah, I think Plymouth have every shot of winning this game, to be honest.
Not to mention that one of the reasons why Liverpool got knocked down and out of the FA Cup was because of their counter style, which not only shook the, of course, much changed to Liverpool side, but they also it's the same kind of style that Manchester City absolutely hates, and it's been proven many, many times throughout this campaign. Because, of course, we're talking about Pep Guardiola's side, and Pep Guardiola means positional football, and this is no longer the way how to play football. Like some people are quite shocked to figure that out and to understand that and to realize it, but that's actually true. But there is one thing that could play in Manchester City's advantage, and that is that they have no more other titles to go for. Premier League, out of the question. Liverpool, they are probably, I think they're already champions. Of course, it hasn't been confirmed yet officially, but they are champions. The difference in the league table is way too big for Man City to ever be able to hold, to catch up and to keep up. Champions League, they got knocked out after a whipping that was delivered at the hands of Kylian Mbappe and Carlo Ancelotti and Real Madrid, of course. So the only place where Manchester City could salvage their season is actually FA Cup. So I think, to me, there is no reason for Erling Haaland not to play, for Bernardo Silva not to start, for Jack Grealish or Phil Foden to start in the starting 11 against Plymouth Argyle. I think now is the time, because if not now, then when? Isn't that right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But then I guess my argument against it would be, why not before now? If you're saying, if there's any time, why not now? It's like, well, surely you could say that before every single game this season, and so many games City just haven't looked on it. So for me, are they what I fear they might be? Is very much an all or nothing team, where they are either at it every single game and they're on it and they're achieving to the highest, or they are completely off it and they just don't win anything. Because we've not seen City kind of be this on and off mediocre team, which is kind of what they are right now, to be honest. I don't think there's any team in the Premier League that goes into a game against City and goes, oh, we're definitely going to get absolutely steamrolled. Maybe Southampton, but that's kind of most games for them this season. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, if it's not now, then when? But I just think it should have been earlier. So why is it just suddenly going to change?
Well, I guess desperation could prove to be the best remedy, I guess. Well, we will see how it goes. We wish Plymouth Argyle all the luck in the world. Man City, we can wish them some luck too. Like, if we are to be impartial, even though we struggle to be impartial in that kind of conversations. But come on, it's football. I mean,
well, how many times would you go into a Man City game wishing Man City luck in the past? But now you feel like they probably could maybe use a little bit of luck, which says everything about where they are, doesn't it?
It's the same kind of sympathy that I had for Brazilian national team after they were whipped 7-1 in the World Cup semi-final against Germany. Yeah. Same exact sympathy. Okay, so let's move on from sympathy to something more intriguing, which is, I think, the highlight of the fifth round proper of the FA Cup, which will be the bout between Newcastle United and Brighton and Hove Albion. That will be that will be a cracker. And to be honest, I'm really wonder whether Alexander Isak will score a brace, or whether he will be stopped in his tracks by a good Brighton defense. Like, what are your predictions there? I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, it is very much, it feels like an attack versus defence situation, doesn't it? Because I think Bart Verbruggen this season has been really good. I think he's such a solid keeper, such a big stature, he's good with his feet. So the attack versus defence matchup is going to be really interesting. If we're doing predictions, I probably think that Newcastle will go through, to be honest. I think it's going to be quite a cagey game to begin with, I think. I think Brighton aren't going to go all guns blazing, because they know that if they leave too much space in behind, that they will get punished, because Isak is very clinical. I think that they are able to defend for, I think, maybe up till 60 minutes. I think then it kind of becomes relentless. Newcastle really go for it. They get a goal. Then the game opens up completely, because as soon as Brighton go behind, they know that they have to go for it at that point. Then it opens up. Hopefully a massive goal flurry at the end. It finishes like 3-2 Newcastle. really good game for the neutral. But yeah, I think Newcastle legit. They have. I think Isak is kind of a step above in quality than probably any other player on the pitch at that point. I think the only person I'd say that comes close from a Brighton perspective is Matoma. I think he's really good, very underrated. I know he's kind of a hipster's choice for a good player, but he's really underrated, and his ability to beat players and his kind of, I'd call it unconventional creativity, if that makes sense. Like he's not your kind of typical good Premier League winger. He seems to be a little bit more considered, a bit more kind of technique based, but it's still really effective. So yeah, they're probably my two standout players for that game. But I think Newcastle edge it.
And with that being said, look, that is actually interesting, because what kind of Newcastle will we see? Because we've got two faces of Newcastle United team. Eddie Howe being the master of defense and quick counterattack that no team can actually keep up with. So that is Arsenal once they got knocked out of the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. Or if we're talking about Nottingham Forest, well, they weren't as solid defensively as against Arsenal, but it doesn't change the fact that they got that result against Nottingham. Or we will see the thrashed Newcastle. So Man City, Liverpool, exposing all of those inconsistencies, all of those imperfections, and capitalizing on them.
West Ham.
Oh, West Ham. Exactly.
We beat them earlier this season.
There you go.
I can't say that about many teams, so I have to say it when I can.
Go ahead. You're more than welcome. I wish I could say something about that. So Manchester City, Liverpool, West Ham early in the season. That will be super interesting. And also another question about Mitoma and Minte. In that game against Bournemouth in the Premier League, it's not like of course, Brighton won, but it came at some suffering throughout the most of the game. Brighton, of course, they had this penalty on the 12th minute, then Kluivert equalized on the 61st, and they were struggling so much to get that edge past Bournemouth. They did, but I think that's not the kind of Mitoma that the Brighton fans would like to see.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Brighton seem to be a really strange one this season. They have such high squad turnover every year, it feels like. Their best players get poached every single year. So the fact that they're not as kind of consistent as they would like to be isn't really a surprise. And yeah, I think it is just tough when in the back of their mind, the Brighton players kind of play to move, if that makes sense. Are they playing to get that move away? Because how many players have actually stayed when they could have left? It's not really many. Most of them kind of, as soon as someone waves a little bit of cash and kind of European football in their face, they're pretty quick to jump at it, which I don't blame them for. Obviously, if you want to progress your career, you're going to do that. But you'd like to maybe sometimes just keep them for that extra season. This is the argument that I've made for Declan Rice not getting any sort of bad words or bad press or any negativity at all from me, because he stayed longer than he had to. He probably stayed for an extra 2.5 more years than he needed to, and he won us something, which is that debt is kind of, we are completely indebted to him, and the fact that he left for big money and is now kind of challenging for higher competition prize, that is completely fair. I think there's probably Brighton fans that look at that situation and go, I wish someone would just stay a little bit longer than they had to, so that we can elevate the squad for a more kind of long-term plan. Everything that Brighton does seems, player-wise, very much, let's make a good team this season. People are going to go, and let's rebuild for the next season. So there's not real prolonged improvement. It's just kind of short-term, good. And if there's not necessarily the talent that comes in, it just then isn't as good because you've not got the guys that have stayed there for that amount of time. I don't know. It's a really difficult one. I'd be really intrigued to see what Brighton fans had to say. But from an outside perspective and a perspective of a fan who's had so many good players leave, it's demoralising after a while. You don't want to get too attached to a player because you know that they could so easily leave,
To be honest, I was just as you said that, I had like right in front of my eyes, like the memory back in 2023 when I was a volunteer at the Conference League final in Prague. You remember it very fondly, and I saw not only Łukasz Fabiański celebrating. Of course, he didn't play in that game, although I kind of wish he had played in
Yeah.
that game. But whatever, Arola still did a good job. He did enough of a job for you to clinch the title, and Declan Rice raising that trophy, and the very next season, right there to your London opponents at Arsenal. That must have hurt, right?
Yeah, like, of course it does, but how much can you complain when, like I said before, he stayed longer than he needed to. He loved the club. I think, to be honest, he will come back to West Ham at some point. I don't think he gets the same kind of admiration and love from the Arsenal fans. I don't think they respect him as much as we did, and they don't kind of idolise him as much as we did, and I think kind of still do to an extent, Another thing to note as well is maybe kind of off topic. I've swerved a little bit, but how good our academy has been over kind of, the past like 20, 30 years. We produce some amazing players, and I think we are used to seeing them leave. So it's not really something that I ever get too annoyed about. If we play against him, I want him to lose. I don't want him to have a good game, but kind of in any other situation, I want him personally to succeed. I'd rather it not be with Arsenal, to be honest. He could go abroad and that would be brilliant and he could win everything. I don't really want our Arsenal to win anything, but if they do, I'd be happy for him personally.
I see some similarities with Marcus Rashford's situation in Aston Villa and some United fans reacting on that as well. I guess this is football. I guess this is how the tides turn. This is how the tides go, and we just have to accept that. You could try swimming against the current, but will you get very far? I don't really know.
Not at all.
Yeah, and then let's just move on from Newcastle, Brighton. All of a sudden, we started talking about West Ham and Aston Villa.
Yeah, sorry, that's my
Oh
fault.
goodness, no, it's fine. It should be entertaining for our listeners and viewers out there. Aye. So then let's just wrap up those highlighted matches with Man United taking on Fulham. Here I have two memories that come to my mind. Number one is the very fresh, boring, dull game at Craven Cottage that Manchester United just edged very slightly with 1-0. But I just really wish I had unseen this game, really. I wish I could just unsee it and just forget about it and just to have, 3 points, let's just move on. And that's kind of what we did. And the second memory that comes to my mind is Aleksandar Mitrovic getting sent off in this exact feature at Old Trafford in 2023, if I remember correctly. With Mitrovic being sent off after a quite violent contact against the referees. Can we expect another feisty performance by those both teams at Old Trafford this weekend, or will we get another, let's just say Craven Cottage 2.0?
I don't know. It's really difficult to predict Man United at the moment, isn't it? Like,
oh god,
they have such quality, but at the same time can be so poor and so kind of, I think boring is kind of the wrong word to use, kind of just lacking any sort of imagination or freedom or creativity. I don't think it will be great, to be honest. I think it might be a little bit of quality from someone. I don't know who it will come from. Obviously, Raul Jimenez has been really good this season. He's kind of started to become the player that he was, before that horrific head injury that he suffered. And then for United, you look at someone like Bruno Fernandes, who obviously has quality that is, you'd arguably say he's the best player that Man United have at the moment. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah. To be honest, I always repeat that in those episodes, and I have to repeat it again since we're talking about Bruno Fernandes. Remove Fernandes from the equation and the math just fails. Without him, there is no Man United team. Mm-hmm. It's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, so I can see someone like him coming up with a bit of brilliance, getting a nice, solid goal that you'd expect someone of his quality to score. But other than that, I don't have massively high expectations, to be honest, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think going into a game with low expectations means you can only hopefully be kind of excited by it. And for me as a neutral, it's a good chance to hopefully watch a good game of football. And I think that's what everyone wants. I don't know what your opinion as a Man United fan would be.
Yeah.
is that if you do lose, how does that kind of, does it affect anything, or is it, has the season kind of already been settled, and whether you go through to the next round really has that much of a bearing? Obviously, if you win, that's brilliant, or get to the final, that's also brilliant. But does going one step further at this point really do too much?
Well, let me just say that, okay, I will answer that question with one short sentence. The faster this season ends, the better for the club.
Yeah.
And just to slightly elaborate on that, I actually had this thought right now as we're talking about it. What is more important for Ruben Amorim's side? Is it more important to stay in the FA Cup? Is it more important to focus on Europa League and the upcoming round of 16 game against Real Sociedad, the first leg? To be honest, if I were him, I would just throw my best forces on everything and just try to salvage as much as you can. Because somebody would say that, oh, but you need to save your forces. You need to save Bruno Fernandes. You cannot be playing every single game. I'm sorry, but if you sit just this much, I'm like, to all the listeners, I'm just showing like very small, like this small margin above the relegation zone, you need to shut up. Because really, like, I'm getting pissed off every single time I hear that, oh, maybe we should, just save some forces. No, we shouldn't. Look at how much we were playing. Look like how bad we were playing, and how much all of those top quality players just failed to deliver. Not only under Erik ten Hag, under, of course, Ruben Amorim, obviously. So if there is any time to prove people wrong, if there's any time to shut the critics once and for all, it's on all fields, maybe apart from Premier League, because there we just need to save ourselves from getting relegated. Oh my God, Manchester United facing relegation. What on earth is happening with the world? I'm getting triggered. I'm sorry. I have to calm down.
No, you're okay.
But FA Cup and Europa League, those are the two things that we have to scratch and claw as much as we can, because if we don't, it will just add another salt. It would just add more salt to the wound. And
yeah, it's tough because
stop talking.
all of those words that you just used, like scratching and fighting and trying to get something out of games, just, it doesn't remind me of this Man United team at all. Like the sort of characteristics that you think about when you think about this United team, just those words couldn't be further from what I associate them with. So I just don't see how this kind of grit and this fight and this determination and this kind of dogged relentlessness to get something out of these games is really going to happen, to be honest. But if this season isn't going to be a complete disaster, you probably have to win one of those tournaments, don't you, realistically? Because if you get to both finals and you lose both of them, yes, that's a good achievement, but not winning anything and probably finishing mid-table at best in the Premier League, it's really bad, isn't it? It's really bad.
But then again, I'm just already getting used to the thought that this season will go down in history and one of the worst in Man United's history. I've already come at peace with it.
Okay,
I do not expect anything else,
Yeah.
really. I mean, you know what you said, like, if we reach both finals and if we lose them all, I would actually be happy if Man United reached at least one of those finals. And I think if we reached FA Cup final, that would be a nice sweet tone, or not sweet point, like piece of flavor that you can just throw into the pot, melt like with melted bitterness and just sourness over and over again.
Little silver lining to a very dark rain cloud, isn't it? It's like a little bit of, oh, okay, well, it wasn't a complete disaster. There was some aspects that you can try and build from, which I think that's kind of the way you have to approach it, isn't it? I know that as a West Ham fan, we've had so many seasons that have just been terrible, like barely surviving. Right. But it's the little glimpses, the result where you beat someone that you weren't supposed to, or the player that you signed for not very much money, or the player that no one's ever heard of that's actually played really well. They're the little bits that you have to take and try and turn that into something more next season. And at this point, United just have to try and do that, because you can be pessimistic and you can be frustrated and angry and down about it, but how is that going to actually do any positive good? How is that going to move you out of the situation that you're in? It's not at all. You have to try and find some sort of positive, because I think negativity just breeds more negativity. So you have to try and fight it with something,
Right. Well, and let's just see whether they will be able to find this positive. Well, of course, I'm just going to be keeping my fingers crossed, and just
Good luck to you,
just like we do in Poland, we're just going to be holding our thumbs, and this is what we do. So this is what we're going to be doing, and that wraps up like those most important games. We're going to take a short break, and let's hear about the platform which we use all the time to record those podcasts. That is Zencastr. Louis, take it away, man.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out as the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the description to learn more about Zencastr.
Thank you, Zencastr, so much again for allowing us to create this and many other podcasts that we have here for you under the auspices of Global Sports Podcast Network. Join into Daily English Premier League. Join into Daily West Ham, when you will hear this and many, many other thoughts about how West Ham's team is progressing, about the upcoming fixtures, about the potential controversies, good talking points, and so much, much, much more. Subscribe. And stay tuned, guys. Stay tuned. The more you guys are out there, the more excited are we. We are to make more episodes like this. And let's just wrap it up very quickly, because we've talked for quite a while now. But we have had a very interesting conversation. So let's just look at the remaining ties for this fifth round proper of the FA Cup. Out of all of the remaining matches that we haven't talked about yet, which one could also catch your eye?
I don't know. That's a really good question, to be honest. As a non-participant in the FA Cup at this point, as a West Ham fan, it's kind of sad when you look at the fixture list and you go, "Oh God, we're just not there. We're not fighting for these points." I think out of the ones we've not spoken about, I like some of the Championship teams. To be honest, I think, when you look at FA Cup games, it's always interesting to see how the Championship teams face up against the Premier League teams, because obviously in recent years we've had so many instances where teams come up and they go straight back down, and this year is kind of reminiscent of that, where it doesn't seem like the promoted teams have much of a chance against the Premier League teams, because there is that gulf in class. But FA Cup games always seem to kind of even the odds a little bit when it comes to Championship and Premier League teams. I, obviously, having been in the Championship not too long ago, West Ham have kind of dipped in and out of the Championship a couple of times in my lifetime, which is always an interesting season when you play in the Championship. We did pretty well. That Ricardo Vaz goal always lives in my memory as one of my favourite memories as a West Ham fan. I think it's amazing. And I really want a Vaz shirt from his era, because he is kind of a cult hero at West Ham at this point, to be honest. Sorry, getting a little bit sidetracked. If we actually go back to the game specifically, let me have a look. I'm actually just going to pull up all of the games, because...
Okay, so just to give you a little bit of time, the matches which we haven't talked about are Aston Villa Cardiff. I think that here Unai Emery said it himself that they are not really contenders for the FA Cup, which actually hints at what we can expect from Unai Emery's side, which will basically be just throwing the second suit against Cardiff. If they qualify, awesome. If not, tough luck. Okay, we'll just move on. We'll focus on Champions League. It's far more important. With all of that being said, Cardiff, with not having such a good form at the moment, I think that Aston Villa, they are still the favourites to go through. Crystal Palace taking on Millwall. Millwall, they did have such a nice streak lately in those games, but even with that being said, I do not think that they will be a force to be reckoned with, when we talk about facing Crystal Palace. So here, I think there's going to be a W in the column of the Premier League. Preston taking on Burnley. That could be a mystery. I really don't know in which direction this match will go. Bournemouth to take on Wolverhampton. Wow, in that last game, they faced not too long time ago And only because of Ilya Zabani's sent-off, Wolves managed to score the winner 1-0 and get those 3 points at the expense of Bournemouth. Of course, it was a shocker, but then again, no Zabani, no party. I believe every single Bournemouth fan out there will agree with me. But with all of that, and with Zabani being back, this could be a tough game. I really wouldn't be surprised for both sides. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw extra time or penalties in that game of Bournemouth-Wolverhampton. So I will say that it's going to be a draw. And when it comes to penalties, it's a lottery. So I have no idea. I will not even go on a limb
yeah,
doing this prediction. Yeah. And the last match, which we haven't mentioned yet, is Nottingham Forest taking on Ipswich Town. 2 Premier League sides. Nottingham Forest is the clear favorite here. And I think that we will not even need extra time to solve that one. I think Forest for the win.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are my predictions. I'm really looking forward to Bournemouth Wolves as to how those two sides will just come at each other's throats, especially after that last week and this controversy surrounding red card, which I think was well deserved, but still. How about you?
I think that Bournemouth Wolves game is really interesting. You know, a little bit of controversy going into a game always brings out the spice in it, which only makes for a better viewing experience. And in cup competitions, anything can happen. So could something again happen like this? Could we see another red card? Could we see things get heated, kind of all of the residual frustration and resentment that came from the last game? Does it carry over? How long do those sort of things last? I think that these are all really interesting questions, and it makes for a really good game. I think it goes to extra time. I think it's a bit of a goal fest. I think it goes 2-2 into extra time, then into penalties. Because I think penalties, after a 0-0, it's really cagey and everyone's really tense. But after a kind of a back and forth goal thriller, I think that makes penalties more kind of exhilarating and exciting, because you're like, each team has had the opportunity to win and thinks they've won, and then they've gone down and they're frustrated. So in my mind, I think that's how I'd like it to play out. And if it does play out like that, I think Bournemouth end up winning that game. I think the quality that they have in the kind of attacking, finishing setting, I think coming down to penalties, obviously, like you mentioned, it is definitely a lottery, but I think they might just have the edge when it comes to kind of technical ability / quality.
So, so that will be basically the other highlight that we will basically be paying attention to. That is basically how the fifth round proper of the FA Cup shapes out. We wish best of luck to all of the teams. More like there, less like there. Well, you know how it is. But overall, the one thing that we can wish is that may there be no other injuries, because the season is already long. There are still games to be played, and we really do not want to see any other nasty injuries. Definitely. And with that, we will wrap up today's Daily English Premier League episode with a special guest, Tom Elkins from Daily West Ham. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And let's remind you guys again that you have been listening to Daily English Premier League. You can listen to us or view us on YouTube, and you can listen to us on wherever you get your podcasts from. Tune in tomorrow not tomorrow. Tune in for Monday, because then we'll be reviewing all of the action from FA Cup. Again, tune in to Daily West Ham for more content considering West Ham United exclusively. I've been Michał Czarniecki. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you and hear you in the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.